Hello, team, and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MSP. This is the Ukraine War Frontline update for the 20th of June 2023. My news video this morning has just been hit with an age restriction, which means the advertising and the reach for the video will be hugely restricted due to the trolling activities of those Russian trolls. It's so frustrating. I don't quite know what to do about that. Yeah, there you go. Anyway, let's get to the frontline update. Let's go to the northeast sector of the map, which is the Kupiansk to Svatova to Kreminna axis. We're going to go to the ISW. That says, just to let you know, on my map, that is Kupiansk up here to Svatova, and then down to Kreminna down there. So that's where we are. ISW, the Institute for the Study of War, American military think tank, says geolocated footage posted on June the 19th shows that Russian forces advanced into the northern part of Vilshana. Where is Vilshana? When we come to the Kupiansk area, we have Liman Pershi, that is somewhat in the grey zone, as according to... Well, actually, no, sorry, that is under Russian control now. It was in the grey zone. It's the area just around it, Sinkivka. We'll come to some claims about this whole area. There are claims that the Russians are on the offensive in the Kupiansk area. There was some outlandish claims that they are on the outskirts of Kupiansk even. I'm not sure that that is true. Vilshana is here. The geolocated footage suggests that I think the Ukrainians were hitting a vehicle in this area and hitting stuff with IEDs and whatnot, vehicles around there getting hit. Anyway, the general location of this activity appears to be here. We'll see where that is and whether that indicates a Russian advance. We'll put that into Google Maps, Google Earth, and we see that, yep, okay, that's exactly where we'd expect Russians to be. I'm not sure that geolocated footage shows an advance at all. It's clearly behind the Russian lines where I have the Russian lines. And in fact, as both mappers here, so just to remind you, the red line refers to the pro-Russian mapper, Syriac Maps, and that's the defensive line for the Russians. And the blue line refers to Andrew Perpetua, the defensive lines for the Russians. There in blue. I had a live stream last night with Andrew Perpetua. Go and check that out. Press a live tab below or check my live section on the front page of my channel. And you can go and check out the chat we had. That's really revealing. So basically, further down the line, there is claim of repelled attacks in Novosibirsk, Yampolivka, Torska, Dubrova, Yurevka, and Sperna. Those are all, some of those last few are south of Kreminna. So as we get to the forest in Kreminna, you have Sperna down there and Yurevka, I think, around the area. We'll come to that. Before we get there, let's go to some of the rumors, which, there's not a lot of information coming out today about the whole of the front, really, and so it's really quite frustrating. A lot of operational security and the fog of war, etc., etc. Various Ukrainian and Russian sources, says no reports, report that near Kreminna and Kupiansk, Russian forces are performing offensive actions. Liman was hit with guided bombs today, whilst west of Kreminna, fighting has flared up. Russian claims being on the outskirts of Kupiansk are unconfirmed. Russian channel says that the VDV, so the paratroopers, have gone on the offensive on the Kreminna fronts, and that is really I kind of summed up here by Andrew Perpetua's map. Just taking a screenshot of that. As you can see, they are putting pressure on in a number of places. I mean, there were no red arrows yesterday, and now there are 7, as according to his map. I mean, there are just lots of attacks possibly going on there. They all seem like they're being repelled, as according to the ISW, and that's according to the general staff, and so on and so forth. So it's difficult to know what is exactly going on, but it could be that the Russians are thinking, right, we've got quite a few. Andrew Perpetua was talking about this yesterday. They've got quite a big defensive force around this area, and the Ukrainians do as well. And so it's just kind of like there's been this constant attacking that doesn't really amount to much that's taken place over the last few months or so or longer. It's been fairly static. Nothing is better summed up by what's going on in Kuzmivka. and Novoselivka. This fight over these two villages. This one Novoselivka is slightly on slightly higher ground than Kuzmivka. The Russians have been trying to take that. They did take it. The Ukrainians took it back. Then they advanced into Kuzmivka, and then but they don't seem to get any further than this. And this seems to be kind of representative of what's going on up and down that front line. So it could be the Russians is trying to distract the Ukrainians, force them to bring up some of their forces in this area to distract away from attacking in other areas where perhaps the Russians are thinner in their defense, so it's trying to help them out in other places. Another Russian, so Malia, the deputy defense minister, noted that Russian forces are conducting active offensive operations along the Kupiansk-Liman line in an effort to regain the initiative. So it's kind of possibly what I was saying. I mean, it's going to be either to distract away or like, well, I don't know. The point of them just gaining the initiative is like, well, whoop-de-doo, what are you going to do with that initiative? So what are their actual intentions there? Just to let you know that Liman is a town over to the, which way am I going? West. So where have you gone, Liman? It's disappeared off of my map. It's about there. Let's try and there it is. So sorry, Liman's there. That's a big fight over that. It was pretty much encircled. The Russians pulled out. God, it seems so long ago now. That's been attacked by guided bombs, gliding guided bombs. Okay, so that's that area. And again, there's probably a lot more to be said about that, but we just don't have the information. Let's go down to look at the Bakhmut area, which on my map is further down here, past Bilohorivka, Sperna, where there's activity taking place. We heard of activity around Brestovo, I think, yesterday as well. And we moved down to Bakhmut here. Not a great deal of, well, no changes as far as the mapping is concerned. Just to remind you, there's an added mapper thrown in here, a deep state map that at the moment is only updating every 48 to 72 hours. In fact, there was no update yesterday at all. Not updating every day. They have a lag of 48 to 72 hours due to operational security. But actually, there were no updates as of their map yesterday. They haven't done their update yet. But none of these, that's in the yellow, so that's deep state map and they're pro-Ukrainian. None of these mappers have indicated any change over the last 24 hours in the Bakhmut area. ISW says a Russian source claimed that Ukrainian forces advanced near Krasnopolivka and conducted additional attacks near Berkivka and Yehidne in the north, Klishchivka, Kernimivka, and Ozarianivka in the south. So this would be pretty much as per usual, par for the course for the last couple of weeks, which is attacks around Klishchivka. They are starting to try and attack slightly further south, actually, than previously. There's been this fight over these tree lines and trenches to the west of the canal down here. The Ukrainians took these positions over the last week, and the Russians tried to take it back. Now it seems like the Ukrainians are trying to push further down south here, maybe take all the last vestiges of Russian control from the west of the canal in the Kurdyamivka or Zarianivka area. And then they're talking about some possible gains for the Ukrainians in the Krasnopolivka direction. So you've got Krasnopolivka up here, Solidar. So it could be that the Ukrainians are attacking around there, and Berkivka is here. Actually, I said there have been no changes. There's a little bit of readjustment of Andrew Perpetua's map to show that the Ukrainians aren't so far into Berkivka. He's more certain, to be fair, of the Ukrainian lines rather than the Russian defensive lines, but he's just readjusted that slightly. And then it goes on to say Ukrainian forces repelled limited Russian offensive operations near Orakovo-Vasilivka. So the only note of Russian offensive is in this area, possibly trying to push out down past this road. Deep state maps showed that the Ukrainians had pushed the Russians back a little bit here, but again, it's quite difficult. Andrew Perpetua in the live stream yesterday was saying that he's got a number of sources on the ground, and they would text him previously, all texting different sort of bits of information about what's going on, in and around Bakhmut. And now they all kind of text him the same text, which means that they are operating to like a tight message discipline. So as like the operational security has reached to that kind of individual level where individual sources are basically towing the party line. And that's obviously frustrating for an open source intelligence person working, but you can understand the the needs must in this is war, right? They're not operating to the behest of people sitting on the internet like myself. Okay, so as we come further down south from Bakhmut, we come towards Avdiivka, and there's a few things to note about here. The ISW states geolocated footage posted on June the 18th shows that both Ukrainian and Russian forces have advanced near Pobyeda. We'll come to that. That's not Avdiivka, that's to the south, indicating that Ukrainian forces advanced southeast of Pobyeda and Russian forces south of Pobyeda. Then there is talk about Marinka, Novomykhailivka, which is further down south. Ukrainian troops made marginal advances near Vesely. So this is what I talked about yesterday. Vesely is this area here, and there is the advance in about a kilometer's advance in Vesely. That's first noted by Deep State Map actually, and then that seems to be confirmed now by ISW here. We'll go and have a look at. There's not much other information about Avdiivka from ISW before we go and look at what they're talking about in Pobyeda. There were some claims that the Russians have advanced in the Spartak area to the south of Avdiivka. I've not seen any mention of this elsewhere. Andrew Perpetua, I mentioned this to him last night, and he didn't know anything about it. So in this area, the Russians could have advanced, and it does look like actually. So JL, who's been helping me, I think there could be some advances here for Suryat map. So that looks like a new advance. Let me just check that. Yeah, that's not on any of their tweets. So they haven't announced that. That looks like a mapping change. So that could verify this claim there. That, as you can see, that's that kind of dark area there. Some kind of it's not really working. So yes. Anyway, as we look there, it looks to be this some kind of, is that railway line going through? Not sure. I'll have to check that out. But yeah, it seems like that could be the case that the Ukrainians have made some advances in that area in Spartak. Sorry, the Russians have made some advances. My bad. And then there are other claims here that go on to Marinka. So I think we're going to go to there next. Not too much else to say about Avdiivka. We'll keep an eye on that area there, see if the Russians make any more advances. It's been fairly static there for I mean, there were claims that Ukrainians made some advances some weeks and weeks ago, but generally to just this kind of area, it's been fairly static. Whereas there's more activity takes place in the Vodyany or Pitny area, and as well up here in the Krasnohorivka, Novobakhmutivka and Krasnohorivka area here. So that is slightly more unusual. We'll keep an eye on that. Right, Marinka, as ISW has already said, geolocated footage suggests that both sides have advanced in that area. Let's look at this. So geoconfirmed here, Ukrainians sent this T-54-55 vehicle-borne IED filled with 6 tons of TNT. That's the one that blew up with a huge shockwave. The claim is that it took out a stronghold. I mean, it depends how you define a stronghold. That shockwave certainly would have caused some damage to the people in these tree lines. If that was their target, then it might well have done that. But it was blown up some distance from there. They are in trench lines. It's hard to know whether these guys would have been taken out by the exploding vehicle or not. They send this ATGM into it. I'll just show you on a larger screen. Is a really significant explosion. I know I've shown you this before, but it's worth seeing again. So the claim is that this has taken out a stronghold. That shockwave, I mean, that tree line is right in that shockwave. So I think most people probably would have been pulverized in there with that. It depends how deep in their bunkers they would have been and whether that could have protected them. But that's a huge shockwave. Anyway, that is in this position. It's been geolocated to here. So this is south. So that this is where the Russians are. That was sent against the Ukrainians. So you can imagine the Ukrainians were in this tree line, and that vehicle was there close to the tree line, and it would have maybe taken out a bunch of people. Whether that would include taking out Stronghold, but of course, you know, to make that kind of more meaningful, you need to then move your troops up and take that line. So I don't know whether that would have happened afterwards. That's the first bit of footage. Here we have Russians attacking Ukrainian lines. So I don't know whether that means that the Russians advanced there in that previous bit of footage, because as I say, it depends whether they actually moved or whether they just sent that tank in and exploded, and then they continued sitting where they were. This is, yeah, again, exactly the same position. That's that same explosion, isn't it? Russian attack on Ukrainian lines between Marinka and Novomakilivka. Yeah, so that is the same attack that's being geolocated there several times. And then we'll see if we can find some Ukrainian gains, as according to the ISW. Yeah, I think the ISW claims about both making advances all refer to the footage around that. It's interesting looking at some of the conversation around whether, so a Russian channel itself, I think, claimed that it was a failed attack, but then others saying it's a successful attack. Someone saying here, unfortunately, it looks like the Russians succeeded with the attack by getting the tank that close. Ukrainian soldiers have basically blown up something like a 1-ton FAB bomb at 100 meters from their position, so I don't think the soldiers just shrugged it off. And then Caliber Obscura himself, so he's one of the guys behind Ukraine weapons tracker, said they didn't shrug it off, but 100 meters and in trenches is certainly way better than up close and open. Yeah, but so on and so forth. And then someone saying one person died, and then you got head and near damage, pretty much. You know, so there's lots of argument as to how successful that attack was. But anyway, the ISW, that's what it's talking about. So that signifies to them gains for both sides. I'm not quite sure, but I think unless we've got evidence that the Russians have made an advance and taken that tree line, I would say that no one's advanced. I'm more worried about, you know, Pobieda, and in fact, Suryat Maps has some claims here that an area of just south of Marinka near Pobieda is now taken by the Russians. Ukrainian-Russian war day 480, situation south of Marinka. Russians continue making slow advances and took control over new defensive positions, as according to them. So that is some gains there for the Russians. And then further to that, there were some claims that the Russians are making advances in a similar area, Marinka front. Russians overrun Ukrainian positions, but actually these two videos don't really show that. They just show a bunch of artillery going off. It doesn't show any taking of positions, as someone says. I don't see anything to confirm that story. I only see Russians firing artillery shells. So then Jereman, I mean, goodness me, don't trust this guy. He's a pro-Russian shill, or pro-Russian voice, but he says that this position was taken, but it shows no evidence for it. Now, what I find interesting about that is this area is here and doesn't really suggest that any area was in fact taken. So if in fact we look at Suryat maps here, you can see it more perfectly. See that light brown field there, and then on Suryat maps that light brown field is there. Right, these are pretty much in exactly the same place. So he's saying that the Russians have taken this position here, but Suryat maps, there's already a position they have. So Suryat maps hasn't shown that being a gain. So yeah, that's this area here. so the claim is that the Russians had taken that, but that was already under their control. So again, various claims coming out. That what we can definitely be certain of is that there is quite a bit of activity going on in this area to the southeast of Pobieda. I talked to Andrew Perpetua about Surat Maps having this claim of part of Pobieda being under the Russian control, and they've had that for several weeks, and no other mapper has that. And he was like, "Yeah, don't know. He's got no." Evidence to suggest that that would be the case. That was the case back in April, and then the Ukrainians took that back. And then subsequently, Syriac has changed their maps since then. But yeah, again, no evidence of that. The reason I'm spending a lot of time on that's quite important for the Ukrainians in order to hold on to Marinka. They can't be encircled, but if the Russians take Pobieda, then it enables them to encircle Marinka more easily. Then we come on down to Nova Mykolivka, an activity, as you can see, there's been activity north of there. Coming on down to Vuhledar, we go to the ISW again. That says, just making sure there's no other thing. Yep. So there were, I think, limited ground attacks in Vuhledar. If we can find out where that is, I'm sure there's mention of it. Yes, here. So the Ukrainian General Staff reported the Russian forces conducted limited ground attacks near Vuhledar. Doesn't give us any real details, so there is activity around there. And then we come on to further to the west in Donetsk. We see this area of Velika Novosilka. Surat Maps reported yesterday that they changed their maps to show that the Russian defensive line is a lot further south than Andrew Perpetua here. There's quite a lot of fighting around Novodonetsk and Rivnepil, Staromayorsk and Uruzhaini, and towards Priyutne here. So those are the sort of 5 places. And I don't think anything's changed at the moment. At least I have no evidence that anything has changed. So sorry if that's quite disappointing. As you might want to know, during the past day, says the General Staff, on the Novodorivka Priyutne area, the Makarivka Rivnepil. So there's both two areas we were just talking about there. So this is Priyutne, and there's Rivnepil, Makarivka. So in these areas, as well as going further west in the Roberterne, Nova and Adiivka area, the Ukrainian military had partial success. They are gaining ground at the achieved boundaries, but there's no real detail about that. And then the Ukrainians have been hitting stuff behind the lines. There's all sorts of footage about concerning vehicles getting hit, tanks, IEDs hitting them. But here we have the artillery brigade targeting self-propelled guns, so a number of them in the Hyrivka area, and I think that's been geolocated. So we'll put that in. The Ukrainians are having quite a bit of success of taking out Russian artillery, and so that's in that area. Previously, we have seen that they took out Mr. Battery 5 of the same type of self-propelled guns were taken out, I think, in this area previously. So there's a lot of activity to try and weaken the Russian defenses from an artillery point of view in that area. But yeah, not too much detail outside of that, really. Barracuda here mentioning that the Russian Ka-52 attack helicopters are targeting the Ukrainian equipment in the area. This is a moving tank that is targeted on the Velika Novosilka front line by this Ka-52. So the Ka-52s are being a real nuisance there, but they are also losing a number. They might have lost as many as 7 in the last week, and that is a huge number of attack helicopters to lose. So yes, they will take out targets, but they're also very vulnerable. Now rebar, I forgot to do rebar yesterday. I had it all lined up and ready to go, but just forgot to add them to my tab. So south of Donetsk, fierce fighting continues in the wooded areas at the Novodonetsk Uruzhaina line at the huge cost. At cost of huge losses, the Ukrainians managed to cut the Russian troops' defensive lines by no more than 200 meters. So he's saying that somewhere between Novodonetsk and Uruzhaina, which is there is 200 meter gain for the Ukrainians at huge losses to the Ukrainians. Of course, Rebar is a pro-Russian source and isn't often hugely reliable. But that still may be the case. Situation remains intense at Rivnopil in the Rivnopil salient. So it's intense around here, this salient there, that the Ukrainians are apparently trying to cut off from the sort of going westwards from the east. They're trying to sort of cut into the salient from there, as well as trying to attack from Novodorivka area as well. So he says it's intense there. Russian units hold the high ground and do not allow the enemy to advance in this sector of the front. And this is indeed high ground here. Sits above the river valley, if you like. It's only a small river, but it is on lower ground. And this is what the Ukrainians would like to have control over. And he goes on to talk about Zaporizhia sector. And I guess we'll get there now because there's not too much more to say about that. And indeed, it really is very little mapping change along this whole area, this whole front line. We have Halai potentially activity around Marfapil and Drozhenyanka, but we're not really hearing much about that. Where is the map? Here it is. So we have a look at the War Mapper map. We can see here that the claims of activity around sort of Marfapil, but again, not something I've seen mentioned at all. And as you can see there, claims of gains around this area, but that'll be over the last few days rather than just yesterday. And then activity, we're going to go on to the Orikhiv, Roberterne area there, and then Lobkove area over to the west. So of these areas, Rebar, again, pro-Russian source, says in the Zaporizhia sector of the front, Russian units conducted a number of successful counterattacks. At Roberterne, the previously lost positions south of Novodanilivka and near Chubenkovo were retaken. Okay, so as we come over here, we come towards Novodanilivka, Roberterne. So it's saying there are some areas around here that have been retaken by the Russians. Novodanilivka, just that's obviously up there. So it's going to be generally the argument is that they are counterattacking there. And then as we go to the west, says that the situation near Pyatikhatki is similar, where as a result of a powerful artillery strike, the AFU actually lost the ability to defend itself. As a result, Russian troops launched a successful counterattack and regained control of the village. Now, I'm somewhat dubious about this claim. So we saw yesterday a number of claims about this village being counterattacked by the Russians and being taken. There is geolocated footage of the village definitely in Ukrainian hands. The question is it still in Ukrainian hands? There could have been a counterattack, but there's also a number of claims saying that was somewhat false. So just I'll leave that up to yourselves to decide. As no report said to the front, Vasilivka axis Pyatikhatki is liberated by the AFU. Today, footage emerged of soldiers inside the small village. Today, Russian forces tried to counterattack, but no changes have yet been witnessed. North of Roberterne, there are continuous battles. So again, not too much information, but yeah, there is going to be pretty heavy activity. There's this kind of rumor, but I'd say this is nothing more than really a rumor. Take it with a huge pinch of salt. Pinch, not grain of salt. Come on, Pierce, sort it out. Hello. Little by little, Russian Marinka, so Russian mill bloggers, are beginning to talk alarmingly about Vasilivka. It seems like we have a serious breakthrough somewhere on the front. Hope that this is true, but it is better to wait for the details. Their words cannot be trusted. Considering there are claims that the Russians have also counterattacked up here and moved the Ukrainians back, I doubt that there's a breakthrough going on here. But there was talk yesterday about Zerezhbianki and Luhove being sort of approached by the Ukrainians. So I don't know. There is obviously a lot of activity going on in that area. So not a very clear day as to what is going on. I guess the last thing I'll say, because that kind of brings us to the end of the front line, I'll update you if there's anything really big throughout the day. Thomas Tynes does say this, and this is important to remember. So far, 4 of the 35 brigades trained for the Ukrainian offensive are in the fight. the 31st Mechanized, the 37th Marine, 47th Mechanized, 128th Mountain Assault. Still 2 tank, 15 Mechanized, 1 Jaeger, 2 motorized, 1 Marine, 1 air assault, and 9 offensive brigade guard brigades to go. In other words, this is still in the very early stages. And I think you have people like Zelensky saying, "Yep, it's all going to plan, and we're continuing to commit to these plans." As in, this is the early stages. As Andrew Perpetua said, you might see that this is all about sucking in reserves, Russian reserves, and attention, and they will hit somewhere really quite different, whether that be in Vuhledar, whether it be up in the Donetsk area. I mean, the thing is, they definitely do need to break this land bridge, or it's certainly advance closer. But it could be that they're attacking all these places, and then suddenly they'll launch an attack where you're not quite expecting it, maybe between some of these active areas, maybe somewhere like there, somewhere towards Volnovakha, and then dogleg down towards Berdyansk. Uh, eventually end up taking this kind of land, and it might be, as Andrew Perpetua is saying, you don't need to get to the coast to cause all sorts of problem. What you need to do is get close enough to use HIMARS on Berdyansk. Berdyansk seems to be the area where they are having a lot of stuff stored and whatnot. There's a lot of accumulations. So if that's sort of 70 odd kilometers, then you can imagine that any advance into this kind of area for the Ukrainians, if they don't have to get the land bridge by winter. If they can do that, then Mariupol is able to be hit really successfully. I mean, they can hit the outskirts at the moment by HIMARS. Berdyansk will be able to be targeted, and this means that these places then become untenable. And it's a bit like that's a theory of Crimea. You don't have to go into Crimea to make life for the Russians there untenable, so they pull out. You don't have to invade it. You just need to get to the border and then hammer it with all sorts of munitions. So there will be different ideas of what is going to be what's going to happen. Different metrics for success, different goals, but it might be that actually one of the realistic goals is not to get to the coast, but get far enough in here to basically make it untenable for the Russians to do what they're doing on the coast. Anyway, that just thought I'd throw that one in there. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share. Take care, and I'll speak to you later in the extra video.